So we have an announcement of a major diplomatic breakthrough. A peace deal has been finalized between Iran and the US. It attempts to halt more than 100 days of intense conflict in West Asia, which disrupted the global energy market. The agreement talks about an immediate ceasefire. It says that Washington and Tehran will permanently terminate conflicts on all fronts. All fronts means Lebanon is included in the ceasefire, which we know is quite difficult to achieve. I mean, Israel struck Beirut hours before the peace deal was confirmed. Do you really think Israel will stop? Netanyahu wouldn't want that. So this all-front ceasefire is practically very difficult to achieve. Then the deal mentions the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. That means we are finally going to see the vital choke point reopen. A choke point that used to handle 1/5 of the global oil and gas shipments before the war. So according to the draft agreement, Iran will end its restrictions on shipping through the strait. Reopening Hormuz also means the end of the US naval blockade on Iran. Trump seemed quite excited to announce this, and he asked the ships of the world to start their engines and let the oil flow. So it is expected that commercial shipping will resume and that there will be normal movement of oil tankers and cargo vessels. If that happens, it will significantly reduce pressure on global oil markets. Then there will be a memorandum of understanding under which the strait will reopen for an initial 30-day period under Iranian arrangements, which is quite vague because nobody knows what these Iranian arrangements will be. Anyway, the US will also lift restrictions on Iranian oil sales. That will provide breathing space for Iran's heavily strained economy. Sanctions relief would allow higher oil exports, more foreign investment, greater access to international banking systems, and economic recovery after the conflict. So there will be no new sanctions, and the existing US and UN sanctions will be lifted according to a timetable only after the final agreement. The draft agreement also includes the release of frozen Iranian assets. That means around $25 billion worth of Iranian assets held abroad will be released. Iran would be able to access these funds through agreed financial channels. Access to these funds will significantly strengthen Iran's finances. The draft also includes a $300 billion reconstruction plan, under which the US and its partners will help rebuild Iran's damaged infrastructure and support Tehran's economic recovery. So a reconstruction and development package will be designed for Iran by US and its partners. So has the US-Iran war ended? Not really. It has merely halted. This is just a draft agreement that will temporarily pause hostilities. Now there will be a 60-day period of intensive negotiations during which both sides will attempt to reach a more comprehensive and permanent settlement. Consider it a path toward a comprehensive final agreement, a roadmap, and not the destination. And this will include the dreaded issue of tackling Iran's nuclear program. Will Iran agree to a strict commitment not to buy, produce, or develop nuclear weapons in exchange for economic relief? Honestly, that won't be easy. Also, Iran's preconditions for a final agreement are quite tough. Release at least half of Iran's frozen global funds, suspend oil sanctions, and lift the naval blockade. All of that will happen gradually. A 2-month timeline for resolving all that is quite ambitious in my opinion. So while the world is breathing a sigh of relief after this announcement, it is a fact that major challenges remain. The peace deal is incredibly fragile. Tensions prevail. Even a slight miscalculation could derail the agreement. Remember, it is still a draft agreement and its provisions are highly disputed. Plus, there are a lot of discrepancies between Iranian media's claims and Washington's expectations. There is already a deep unease in Israel over the agreement. Netanyahu is considering it as a setback because it leaves Iran's nuclear program, ballistic missile program, and regional proxy network entirely unchecked for now. Hezbollah and Lebanon also remain sticking points. Israel has been constantly pushing the US to keep Lebanon separate from any US-Iran agreement. Iran wants to retain full control over Hormuz and its nuclear program, which is unacceptable to Israel and the US. Therefore, like always, clarity is elusive. The draft says that reopening will happen under Iranian arrangements. Trump says that shipping traffic must resume without any tolls or payments. Which of this is true? No one knows. A lot of vagueness persists. Then it won't be easy for Iran to manage the physical reopening of Hormuz. Even if the deal succeeds, clearing sea mines and restoring shipping to its full potential will take time. Repairing damaged infrastructure will also take time. Until a final treaty is signed, promises such as sanctions removal and reconstruction plan package are merely proposals and not guaranteed outcomes. Who would believe promises such as US non-interference in Iran's internal affairs? That is simply not going to happen. So these are just reports, nothing is yet confirmed. So the draft agreement is fragile, uncertainty remains, and we'll have to see whether the implementation of this draft memorandum survives domestic opposition in both Iran and Israel.